Welcome back, all my Tech Mixers. Today's video, we've got something a little special and a little different for you because I just finished watching a fan edit of The Wheel of Time Season 1, and this is my review. Oh, he's technically Mexican and 3/4 American, but for 3 generations he's got that nationality. Great-great-grandpa headed south, whose kids had kids then turned around. It's not what the show's about, but it's why he's Mexican technically. It helps that he was raised in New Mexico, lived in Guadalajara for 2 years, speaks fluent Spanish with a bachelor's degree in language and makes taquito. So, this comes from the Wheel of Time fan edit, whose YouTube channel I will link in the description, and the edit you can get for yourself if you follow the links in the description on his videos. So, it's not hard to find if you watch it yourself, and I recommend that you do. It was pretty good. The parameters of this project was to edit down The Wheel of Time Season 1 into a feature-length film, as well as fix some of the problems that were present in Season 1. And for the most part, if you follow what this person was trying to achieve in their edit, I think that they do that pretty well. And I definitely prefer this version of the content better than Amazon's Season 1. I think if I ever have to rewatch Season 1 again, I'll just watch this because it's better. If you've been following the channel, you may already know this, but I was initially very excited for Amazon's The Wheel of Time. The trailer for the show looked incredible and looked like it was going to be very faithful to the books. I love The Wheel of Time books. They are very near and dear to my heart, and I absolutely loved Robert Jordan's work. And when the TV show came around, I was very, very excited for it. And the first half of the TV show, with the exception of a few things that I was not a fan of, was really good. I was on board for a lot of the TV show. Unfortunately, the second half of Season 1 progressively gets worse and worse for me. And I'm very understanding here. I gave the show a lot of credit. I completely understand that in adaptation, you have to make changes from the source material because it just won't work otherwise. You can do things in books that you can't do on film, and you can do things in film that you can't do in books. So to expect an adaptation to be 100% pulled from the book in a one-to-one adaptation is absolutely impossible, and that's not what my problem with the TV show was. The problems with the TV show entered when they started making changes to the established lore and completely shifting entire characters' personalities and motivations, and unfortunately the last half of Season 1 just completely falls apart, in my opinion. It became worse and worse as it went along, and now, having had time to sit back and analyze the whole show and experience, the experience really has soured for me. I don't enjoy the first half of the season as much as I did when I first saw it, seeing where the whole thing leads. And the most frustrating part is that it would not have been hard to fix any of these problems. The show made trouble for itself by inserting unnecessary changes. It overly complicated the narrative, and it didn't give the show time to focus on the main characters because it preferred to just do a bunch of world building that wasn't relevant to the story and especially the finale in any way whatsoever. And so Season 1 in general is just very, very muddled. And as it stands, I have a problem recommending it to other people. Now, I don't think that the show is beyond repair. I think that they really could, come Season 2, fix a lot of the problems they created themselves, and overall the show could still be a success for me. I'm still holding out hope that they will do the smart thing and focus on a more faithful adaptation for upcoming seasons. I really think it can be done, and I hope it is. I want to be able to recommend the show to people, but as it stands right now, I just can't. And it's a bummer because I was so excited for this, and I was really on board for the first half. It's such a shame how badly the show fell apart. But enough talking about Amazon's interpretation, before we must move along to my review of a completely different entity. The goal of the Wheel of Time fan edit was to trim the show down into a movie. And like I already said, I really liked it. I liked it much better than the full season. The Wheel of Time fan edit is good. It does have some problems, and I want to talk about those problems and successes here. So, first off, I want to go over what it did well. And it did those things very well. Now, obviously, spoilers for season 1 and probably a couple books beyond that. If I accidentally mention stuff that needed to be fixed in season 1 for later books, I'll try not to do that, but I can't make any promises. So, other goals of this fan edit were to de-emphasize the Dragon Reborn mystery, because it was way overdone in the TV show, so much so that literally every person I talked to who was watching it who hadn't read the books guessed correctly who the Dragon Reborn actually was, because it was not handled well in the show. It was so heavy-handed, it was obvious. And this first point, the fan edit does really well. It trims out a lot of the unnecessary fluff and was a much better experience. And I think because of that, it also made the reveal of Rand being the Dragon Reborn more effective, because it wasn't trying to be coy. It was much better. Another goal was to recharacterize Lan and Moraine as mysterious strangers with ambiguous intentions, at least for the first half of the film, which I definitely think was achieved here. It was a lot more effective. A lot of the scenes that they had together alone were cut, and it made the main characters' distrust of them, or, not quite being sure if they had their best intentions in mind. It made it a lot more effective, and it was much more believable, and the overall tone of the first half of the show was much better. Even though I liked the first half of the show in season 1, leaving it more ambiguous made it better. And the last two goals of this project were to fix some of the changes to the characters, which was also done really well. This guy wanted to edit out Matt being a thief, and he does, and it works very well. It makes Matt's character much more relatable in the show, and fixes a lot of stupid problems that the show introduced for no reason. And the last goal was to fix the characterization of Tom, Agelmar, and Amalasia. It also makes Tom not a thief, but that was really only editing out like one scene of the show. But my biggest praise of this entire fan edit is what it does to fix Agelmar and Amalisa's characters. Amalisa didn't really need a whole lot of fixing, but Agelmar in the show is just completely disrespected and turned into a misogynist, arrogant prick. And he is, in the show, for some reason, is the complete opposite of his characterization in the books. In the books, he is relieved that Moraine shows up because he thinks that she's there to help him fight the Shadow. And in the show, they turned him into a bumbling moron who's responsible for the deaths of all of his people. And it was so disappointing because he's such a good, strong, stoic character in the book. And in the show, they turned him into a misogynist so they can drill home their identity politics and over-the-top feminism. It was ridiculous and insulting in the show. And this fan edit completely saves Lord Agelmar's character. I loved Agelmar in this fan edit, and I hated him in the show. Out of all of the changes that this edit made, that is by far my favorite change. Agelmar is awesome in the fan edit. Good job. You did that super, super well. Now, my biggest criticism of this fan edit, where it falls flat for me, is its length. The goal was to edit it down into a feature-length film, and I know in your notes he said the goal was to keep the length of the film to less than 5 hours, or aim as close as possible to 4 hours, and I'm sorry, that's a bad goal. That's longer than the Return of the King extended editions, which I am 100% willing to sit down and watch. I've watched the extended editions of Lord of the Rings countless times because they're wonderful. I don't know if I consider those movies. The theatrical releases of the Lord of the Rings movies are feature films. They're long ones, but they're still films. When I watch the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, I think of it as a miniseries. Any one of those films is just way too long to be considered a feature film. So to have your upper limit be 5 hours is absolutely insane. So my biggest criticism is not enough was cut. It's still a really good edit, but it feels like a miniseries, not a movie. The final runtime of the Wheel of Time fan edit is 4.5 hours. No. I'm sorry. It's too long. I tried watching it with my wife, and she fell asleep. So I had to finish it in 3 sittings, which is why it's taken me so long to get this review out. I was supposed to do it a week ago, but life got busy, and I don't have time to watch a 4.5 hour movie. I think the goal should have been to try and cut the material down to a 3-hour feature film, giving 30 minutes leeway. Like 3.5 hours is the longest I would accept a feature film. Number one criticism, you gotta cut at least a whole nother hour of material out of this edit. And that's hard. That's hard to do. I've come up with a list of additional scenes that you can cut. And if you don't want to do it, I'm considering making a fan edit of your fan edit, cutting out a whole nother hour of material. So let me consult my notes. And these are more things that you could have done. Not all of these things in my notes are criticism. There's a lot of praise. The cold open. I think the cold open that you chose was a good choice. I really liked the Lews Therin cold open that you have on your YouTube channel that you didn't end up using in this fan edit at all. And I understand why, but I'm going to link to that as well because it's a great scene. But I understand why that wasn't used, because it would be hard to fit it into this edit. The cold open that you do choose for the entire film is Dragonmount with Rand's mother fighting a bunch of soldiers while giving birth. I think that this works, but it needed to be edited down. First off, it is a cool fight scene. It's choreographed really well. It's also really stupid. Because she's not only pregnant, she's literally giving birth. Now, I've never given birth, but I've watched my wife give birth several times. And she would not be able to kill 8 people while doing so. Now, I get that Aiel are stronger than that, but it's still pretty ridiculous. I think what you could have done for this opening scene is have her kill the first guy and then crawl back to the rock and have Tam show up with a sword. It would have been a lot shorter, and it cuts out most of the action that's left in this fan edit, but it's so ridiculous to watch a woman giving birth kill 10 guys. And it would have saved you a few minutes. The next thing that you can cut out is more action. Is another unnecessary action sequence, which is all of Winter's Night. Now, I liked this in the show, but it's not in the books, which means it's unnecessary. And I think it would have been more effective to show Rand's perspective getting attacked in the farm, and then you could add in the little bit from episode 8 where he's talking to his father while dragging him back to the town. You know, the little diddly where he finds out it's not his dad. And then have him show up with his father, hoping that Nynaeve can heal him, only to see that the town was also attacked by Trollocs while he was gone. I think that could have been a really effective scene. And then you find out, oh, Nynaeve is also missing? What are we going to do? Oh, good thing there's an Aes Sedai here who can heal my father. That would have cut out a lot of screen time, and I think it would have been more effective for the film. Seeing the other perspective of Winter Night worked for the TV show, but I think that this would work better for a movie. It also makes Tam look better because the show made Tam look like an idiot. He's a swordmaster with a heron-marked blade, and he couldn't even beat one Trolloc by himself. But then in Winter's Night, they have a bunch of women kill Trollocs. Perrin's wife kills like 3 Trollocs on her own, and it makes Tam look stupid. So, I know I'm cutting out another action sequence, but it's better for the film, trust me. Seeing my notes, I originally wrote, it could be possible to cut out Therin Ferry too, just for runtime's sake, which I do think would work, but after watching the whole thing, I don't think is necessary, because there are a lot of lines that refer back to what happened on the ferry later on in the season, which also would have been hard to cut out. And I like the Therin Ferry scene. It introduces a little bit of gray morality, and it helps emphasize the main character's distrust of Moiraine and Lan. They're not exactly sure why they should trust these people. So, although I originally wrote it down, I don't think that scene should be cut. Overall, the first half of the fan edit is pretty good, because it mostly consists of the first half of the show, which was also good. The problem is, it's too long. So, here's more stuff you could have cut out. The scenes with Mat and Rand talking with Dana, the Dark Friend. You could have cut out the slap and tickle line, where Dana implies that they're gay. First off, it doesn't make sense. There's no reason for Dana to assume that they're gay when the first thing that Mat does is flirt with her. Also, Rand's retort is that if he wanted to, he could do much better than Mat. I'm sorry, Mat's the best character in the Wheel of Time. Rand could not do better than Mat. Cut the line, baby! And now, the most controversial thing on this list, which I can't believe I wrote down, but it's on there. It's quite possible you could cut out the entire Logain sequence, which is my favorite part of the TV show. But you could go from Lan Moiraine Nynaeve showing up and seeing Liandrin revealing Logain, saying, "We just captured the false dragon," and then cut straight to the 1 month later scene. It would work. It would cut out some of Lan and Nynaeve romance and a little bit of world building, and also the best action sequence in the entire show, but it might be necessary for runtime reduction. I think I would have to cut it down myself and see the comparison to see whether it's justified. It is a really good sequence, but it's pretty long. So I'm torn here. I think I could go through the scenes that come before this and cut out more filler just to keep this in, because if as it stands right now, I've cut out all of the action. And that's not good either. You got to have some excitement. But now we're getting to the second half of the fan edit, which consists of the second half of the show, which just presents more problems. Watching this back, I had almost forgotten all of the things that frustrated me with the TV show. And this, unfortunately, as good as the edit is, can't edit out some of the stupid things that the show shoehorned in. Here are a few of the things that I noticed that I hated about the TV show. Rand, when he's talking to Loyal about the book, about the adventures of Jane Farstrider, he says that Jane was a woman, which is stupid. Also, when Egwene talks to Moiraine and gives her the rings she stole from Valda, she says the line, "Valda won't hurt any more of your sisters now." And that's a terrible line. Why would Egwene think that? She thinks that she killed Valda? She stabbed him in the top shoulder. That was a really dumb, arrogant line. But I know that these are not your fault. These are the fault of the show writers. Back to my notes. Logain being tried by the Amerlin seat. I think you should edit out Logain groveling, because I love the first half of that scene where Logain is trying to goad them into killing him, and it's kind of ruined for me when he just starts bawling at the end. I think you could find the soundtrack and match it up with that scene and just replace the audio so it doesn't just ruin his character. Also, right after that, you cut out more of that scene where Moiraine is chastised by the Amerlin for absolutely no reason. Liandrin brings up the fact that Moraine hasn't been telling us everything. And it's such a bad plan, it makes Leandrin look stupid. It just creates so many problems for the narrative. I think you should totally cut out the Moraine banishment subplot. Which you cut a lot of it out. But it would still make sense if it's not there at all, because you can keep the scene with Moraine talking in the bathhouse and Mygon saying, hey, you need to stay at the White Tower. So I think it's implied in that scene that she knows she can't stay here, and with the pressure of the other sisters wanting her to stay at the tower, but Moraine knowing the importance of her mission to sneak out in the middle of the night would be just fine. You don't need the banishment subplot. But at least you cut out the stupid swearing on the oath rod scene, because that was evil. That's what the bad Amerlin does. And the show makes Swan do it, for reasons. Thanks for cutting that out. Also, I liked how you cut out a lot of Moraine just straight up lying to people in Tar Valon about the whereabouts of their friends. There was one line you had to keep in with between Moraine and Egwene, but that one would have been really hard to edit out. And I don't think that one was as big as a contradiction as some of the others. Also, why did Moraine need to lie at all? There's no reason why she couldn't have got them all together. It was dumb. It was dumb. But that was edited down really well. And unfortunately, it would be impossible to cut out the pointless Moraine and Swan love scene without completely removing the only reason the show gives the viewer for going to the Eye of the World. And in my naivete, I thought that the Eye of the World setup wasn't great in the book, but the show made it so much worse. And I just reread the Eye of the World, and it's not that bad. It's not the greatest setup ever, but it makes sense. The show doesn't make it make sense. And that on your knees line is the cringiest thing I've ever seen on screen. I wish you could have cut that out, but it would be hard too. Also, the transition from the on your knees to Moraine asking, what aren't you telling me? That jump was a bit jarring. I think you could have cut in just a split-second scene of them on the bed before jumping to that question. That edit was a little bit rough for me. But again, most of these problems would be impossible to fix in editing. And then I already said you can cut out the exile subplot. It's also a shame you can't edit out the destruction of Matt's character, because that's in the show. All they needed to do was say, he's too sick to come with us. That would have fixed the problem. But no, they make him betray his friends, even though Matt in the books is the most loyal character ever put to pen. But from the point they get to the ways to just about the ending of the movie, there's very little that I would change in this edit. I think it's done really well, and the pacing is pretty strong. I loved that you edited out Nynaeve burning out, because that was stupid. I'm checking my notes for other things. Agelmar's character is absolutely saved, and it's great. I think you also should have cut out Moraine feeding Matt to the Red Aja. That was a stupid line and makes Moraine look evil. That scene in particular could have been cut just a few seconds earlier, and it would have been better. And my last big edit that I think I would choose is the scene with Rand doing archery and Egwene approaching him, which in the show says, I waited for you to come back. I waited for an hour for you to come and apologize. And miraculously, you were able to cut out the entire love triangle subplot, which was fantastic. But because of that, this scene transition is a little bit jarring. When Egwene comes and talks to Rand, you have to cut out a lot of that dialogue, and that edit wasn't done super well. And the way that you can fix it is to cut it out entirely. I think Rand needs to leave in the middle of the night without saying goodbye to Egwene here. And it would have worked and cut out a lot of screen time, because you could have had him sitting up in bed and going over that realization, and just cut those two archery scenes together, because they happen apart, but you could have him missing and then going through realizations in his brain and then hitting the target. That would have worked, and it would have cut out the awkward edits that you have to do. It does also cut out a nice moment between Egwene and Rand, but that moment is kind of repeated in the finale anyway. When Rand is talking to the Dark One, he kind of repeats the same things that he said to Egwene personally. So I think that can be cut. Also, there were some great cuts in the Blight so that Moraine doesn't completely contradict herself. And You totally saved Lan's character by not having him sleep with Nynaeve and then say, "I'm sorry, we can't be together." That made him look like a terrible person, and it's not in this. Super good. My last note is that in this edit, Lan gets to the Gap and to the Blight before the Trollocs show up, which is great, because in the show, the Trollocs show up, and then Lan leaves, and somehow sneaks past all of the Trollocs who have flooded the Gap, and it's stupid. So, those are all my notes. Overall, I think you've done a really good job, and I highly recommend watching this fan edit. Like I've said, I think it needs to be edited down a little bit more, and it's unfortunate that there are some elements from the TV show that cannot be fixed in the edit. But overall, really good job, and it was by far a much better experience than watching the entirety of Season 1 on Amazon. So, high praise. All of these links are in the description if you want to watch it yourself. And go show this guy's channel some love. So, this has been my review of the Wheel of Time fan edit. I know that there are other edits out there. I don't have time to watch all of them. I'm a busy boy. Editing this video alone is going to take some time. I'm looking at the length of my raw recording right now, and it's 50 minutes, so it's going to be a long night. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We're really trying to hit 1K subscribers so I can get the show monetized. But we'll see you on the next one, baby!